Thank you for joining Market News with Rodney Lake. This is a regular program for the GW Investment Institute, where we talk about timely market topics. I'm Rodney Lake, the director of the GW Investment Institute. Let's get started. Welcome back to Market News with Rodney Lake. I'm your host, Rodney Lake. Today is a very special episode. We have a very special guest today, Sofia Cruz, who's a GW School of Business student. And as a reminder, this is a GW Investment Institute School of Business episode of Market News with Rodney Lake. And we're going to welcome Sofia Cruz. Welcome, Sofia.
Thank you for having me.
Sofia, please introduce yourself a little bit further. You're at GW, George Washington University School of Business, which is the best school at GW. Not to say that the other schools aren't good,
yeah,
but this is the best school of Business student. But maybe give us a little bit more about you.
Of course. Well, I'm Sofia Cruz, and I was raised in a family of business owners. So that led me to study finance. I've always been really curious about how companies raise capital, how companies are able to grow. And so that's what led me to study finance here at GW, and especially here in GW because it's in Washington, D.C. And you have like policy and also business at the same hand.
So you're studying finance,
yeah,
which I'm also partial to as the favorite major. What have you thought about your finance classes so far? And what's been maybe the most interesting part of your finance coursework?
Yeah. Well, my favorite finance classes have been like capital markets class I've taken. I think that's one of my best classes ever. And also financial derivatives. It's been a really demanding course, but it's a really nice class. Like you learn a lot.
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that. One of the reasons that we wanted to have you as a guest, so thank you very much. You host your own podcast, Midnight Markets Podcast, and I was a guest on your podcast. Thank you so much for hosting me. So, and that's part of the Stock and Portfolio Management Club here at GW. Could you maybe talk about the Stock and Portfolio Management Club and your podcast a little bit?
Of course, yeah. So as you said, Midnight Markets is part of SPMC, the Stock and Portfolio Management Club here at GW. Well, SPMC as a whole is a club run by students, and we have 3 different divisions. We have our general body division, which is our members, our general body meetings. And then we have the fund, which is our investment fund with some analysts from the business school as well. These are people who are really interested about the markets and do their pitches on what stocks to trade and we also have Minute Markets, which is how we reach out to our members and people even outside the business school. And that's where I had you as a guest on my podcast. And awesome, like we talk about the markets and it's so good to have this community. We also have our physical newspaper and our daily newsletter. Yeah.
Excellent. And let's back up maybe to the Stock and Portfolio Management Club first. So what types of students are attending these meetings and who is it open to?
Of course. So SPMC is a unique club because everybody from, even if it's outside the School of Business, you're able to join. And if you have this shared interest and passion for the market, like you're able to go in depth into it because we have people who are so passionate about it in our general body meetings too. Yeah.
And how often do you meet?
It's biweekly.
Oh, excellent.
Every other Wednesday.
And how do people find out about this? Is it the newsletter? Is it the podcast? Is it all of the above? Something else?
That's a great question. Well, as soon as the club began, which was not so long ago, like some 2.5 years ago, I became a member actually, and it was through Engage. But originally, people have been telling me lately, like, oh, I found out through Instagram, I found out through TikTok that there's a club who talks about stocks and like how to invest. And I'm just so happy that we are able to reach more people now that we have like social media and other platforms.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And for those people who have maybe not attended a meeting, what's a typical meeting look like from start to finish?
So if you've never been a member, maybe because you didn't have time or maybe because like you didn't know about SPMC, we start by like saying like who we are, like if you're not familiar. And then we proceed to talk about markets. We talk about a market update, which I really enjoy because it's an opportunity for everybody in the room to say like what they think about the news and like what stocks they're looking at and why they think the stocks do good or bad. And it's just like everybody stays up to date. Like even if you're like not so familiar with like, let's say fundamentals and things, like you're still able to learn even in that little market discussion at the beginning, because like you're listening to what your friends are thinking about. Like, oh, do you actually think Netflix stock is going to go up or down? Like things like that. It's just like, oh, so interesting. But then we proceed to like our general topics. Sometimes we talk about, let's say, poly market and things like new
things that are happening now.
Things that are happening now, what new ways to invest, like let's say alternative assets, like talk about Kashi poly market, new alternatives that you can like profit from. And then we have like several different topics. One of the most interesting ones is like how like politics even affect finance or like how companies are doing. Yes, that's like really interesting. And then we proceed to have like our fun time when we like, that's like really good for the members to like make friends, build friendships. And like you're able to like play this game where like you're asked like what you learned through the meeting.
Nice.
Yeah.
I attended one meeting. I saw that you ran a Kahoot at the end of the meeting. And I think that's a lot of fun and a great way to engage the people and the students that are there. So maybe also talk a little bit about the type of companies that the group is currently following.
Yeah, so as a whole, SPMC, we have our general body, as I said, like everybody's able to join. But we have our analyst fund, which is a little bit more selective. We have our application process and our base of analysts currently, we have been going through a lot of different alternatives for investing currently. So lately we looked through penny stocks. Like we have had really interesting pitches. Actually, I'm going to shout out to some of the best analysts like Lucas Bouchard, Virasha. These are people who have like made amazing pitches. And like, I remember on the top of my head, IMUX, like we had like unrealized gains as soon as we got into the trade because like these are really interesting, whether it's like penny stocks or like corporations, it's been a lot and it's like really interesting.
Excellent. So again, if students are trying to figure this out, they go to the Instagram, to the podcast to find out about how they can sign up for these meetings.
Yes, exactly. So you actually do not have to sign up for the meetings.
Okay.
Like everybody's welcome to join. But if you want to be part of the fund, you're able to apply. And actually, yes, we do have applications open and you're able to join through the LinkedIn on our Instagram. So through the link tree through our Instagram. Oh, yeah.
Excellent. All right. So now maybe let's go back to the podcast. So the Midnight Markets podcast, which you are the host. And again, I was a guest at one. So I'm very appreciative of that opportunity. Thank you very much. I had a lot of fun. So thank you. Could you talk a little bit about the podcast for the people who maybe don't know about the podcast and the types of guests that you have on and the things that you talk about?
Of course. Yeah. So the podcast is Minute Markets and I do Minute Markets in two different segments, kind of like you as well, because we have like our guest episodes and also like market discussion episodes. I host our guests and I've had really amazing guests from the business school, outside the business school. And like, yes, I had you some semesters ago and it was so interesting. Like that's when I started like, oh my goodness, like getting your perspective, like what companies the portfolio group was investing on and like why, which was really interesting. And I learned a lot from you. And also I've learned a lot from professors here in the business school, Professor Arthur Wilson.
Nice.
He worked at the Chicago Stock Exchange and like getting how we like started with options as soon as they became a thing here in America. Like that's so interesting. And also like Professor Van Order, how he was a risk officer for Freddie Mac and like so many interesting things like that I'd never thought like I would learn from like these amazing professors. And like it's all been like a learning curve in the podcast as well because like I get my guests and like they also have so much to share like their experience as well and like what companies are looking at, what trends do they look at, and it's been a lot. It's been really fun.
And from the podcast, can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the highlights, things that you've learned, and I think things that maybe you think are very useful for your audience that maybe they wouldn't have uncovered without the podcast?
Of course, yes. There's been a lot. I feel like every time I get a guest, like I learn so much. But I remember Mr. Greg Wong, he said to really like not be scared to change like anything in your life and in your career or whether like you're learning. And I took that with me because whether it's like I'm studying for like a specific class or whether I'm like doing a new project or I'm taking on a new challenge, like I'm able to, yes, he said, like, don't be able to try new things.
Right.
So what about like a new study method? What about like, so like that's really interesting. And
no, that's important. And we had Mr. Greg Wong in our class recently. So shout out to Mr. Wong, who's on the advisory board for the Investment Institute. And I agree with that. And I think it's really important for students. Also, maybe we can do a public service announcement here to everybody is that, don't be afraid to try new things and experiment. And obviously, not be afraid to fail at those things and move on very quickly. And I think that's an important lesson in life. And And that's hard to know, especially as a young person, that, okay, it's okay to try these new things, right? Whether it's a new study method or taking a new class, like, oh, this is really not in my core, what I think is a core strength, but I'm interested in this, not being afraid to take those classes, signing up for a club. So maybe you're not, don't have a big background in the stock market, but, join the Stock and Portfolio Management Club. Hey, that's the opportunity to learn. Maybe, start watching the podcast. Maybe what are some other things that you've talked about on the podcast, and maybe not just including the guests, but some just topics that you thought were very interesting?
So actually, we had a Bloomberg economist coming into our podcast one of these days, and her name is Estelle. And she talked about how, like, for forecasting, they're able to forecast for their clients on Bloomberg going through alternative metrics. Like, they go through the ADP jobs report. Like, and if, let's say, we weren't getting, like, the Bureau of Labor Statistics wasn't like sharing what they were getting from their surveys, we were able to, like, go through the ADP, and, like, it's really interesting because those are real numbers, and, like, they actually, like, forecast, like, if you're able to read them properly, like, what the market's going to do next, whether for, like, Fed cuts or, yeah.
Excellent. And now that we're closing in on the end of the year here, we're recording this mid-December 2025. What's the 2026 look like for the podcast and for the Stock and Portfolio Management Club?
Yeah, so 2026, oh my God, this year went so fast. So we have so much to do next year because we are actually partnering with the Investment Institute.
We're very excited about this.
We're excited about that. But also, like, our analyst fund, like, we want to grow our base of analysts, and also our members to, like, keep constant members, and of course our newspaper. Like, our newspaper right now is, like, priority. Leah and Kabir, these are people who are, like, working so hard for, like, getting this newspaper out, and in different locations in the business school and dining locations everywhere. Yes.
So you've gone old school in the newspaper. Maybe mention a little bit about that. What was the idea behind that? So many people now are very focused on digital and everything online, but you guys tacked the other way and went a little bit old school. What was the reason?
The reason is because we had, like, our newsletter, like, on your email. You get it, you're able to, like, a personalized email on, like, what's happening in the markets and, like, inputs for people who are constantly trading. But we said, what about if we have, like, a newspaper that you're able to grab whenever you go to class or in your dining hall, and you can, like, read what's happening in the markets, like, with inputs from students. And that was like, okay, that's it, because also, like, you get it physically. For me, actually, like, I'm one of the, like, old school people who prefers, like, physical instead of, like, a digital. Nice. Even if it's the news, like, yes, sometimes I prefer reading, like, a newspaper. Like, I know I sound outdated, and I know, like, the future is coming soon, and we are in the future, but we do have, like, our newsletter as well. But having that is just, like, it reminds you, like, how important it is to, like, see physically things. Yeah.
So it's a little bit of an old school throwback. Well, very nice. Well, thanks. Thanks for sharing that. One of the things that I did want to highlight, which you mentioned already, is the partnership for the Investment Institute and Stock and Portfolio Management Club. So in the spring semester, we'll have our portfolio group. So let everybody know now, hey, join the portfolio group. And we're going to partner with Stock and Portfolio Management Club to help us run that this year. So we're super excited about that. And we appreciate this opportunity to work closely with you and the team there. And maybe one of the things that you could mention too is, as we kind of think about the stock market and stocks in general, are there any specific companies or ideas? AI has been such a big topic. And when I was on your episode, we talked about NVIDIA quite a lot. Are there any particular companies that you're excited about as we think about, in addition to this partnership in 2026, we're always thinking about companies and AI. What kind of companies are you thinking about right now and the club is thinking about?
So the club, for our analyst fund, we have, like, several different companies that we invest in. We have from MP Materials to companies like Robinhood and also penny stocks, like several. But me personally speaking, well, I've been thinking a lot about AI and, like, how important it is in our lives. And lately, if you've been following the news, you've been able to see that Oracle's not performing so well. But when a company's not performing so well, and like they have, like, an immense market share, like, it's good to have trust in them, because also, like, their leadership's able to grow from the down they've had. So, well, me personally, I'm following Oracle, but you said AI. And, like, I think AI is so interesting because now, let's say Google, like, with their Gemini version.
Do you use Gemini?
Actually, I used to be a ChatGPT loyal fan and like user, but I realized that you're able to upload videos on Gemini and get like a video analyzed. And like sometimes I'm like in class, oh my God, wait, let me see, what does this like specifically mean on Gemini? And like you're able to like see, oh my God, like this is the perspective. Okay, that's like better.
Yeah, I think Gemini 3.0 is a huge upgrade from 2.5. And at GW, a lot of our enterprise services are through Google. So having access and having 3.0 built right in, I think is super useful. So I use Gemini. I use all the models, maybe not all the models, but I use Gemini. I use Grok 4.1. I use Claude. I use DeepSeek just a little bit, and ChatGPT 5.1, of course. But I'm trying to use all the models to try to figure out like which one is better at which activity. And I think Gemini, though, has been such a big advancement. And I think as far as, remember, this is entertainment and educational purposes only. But I think Google, Alphabet's the parent company, as many people know, it's, I think important distinction that they have this vertical integration going. So they control the chips on the TPU side, the tensor processing units, and that they've done from years ago. Now they're on their 7th generation called Ironwood. And I think it's a really important distinction between them and another provider like ChatGPT as an example, who rely on other parties and other chips to deliver that. And obviously that can affect their margins. That certainly affects their capital expenditures. And so any views on how do you think AI will evolve from here? Do you think all these productivity gains that people keep talking about, I mean, you're a user of these things, you're a student, do you think these productivity gains are going to come through? Or do you think really right now it's just more hype about, yes, these productivity gains are coming? For example, you hear in business that, oh yes, we're actually hiring less people now. We're not firing people, but when somebody leaves, we're not replacing that. So let's say we had 10 workers and 2 people left. Now we're down to 8 workers, and we're using AI to be more productive. That's what the business says, or the owners of the business, or the managers of the business. But if you ask the workers, they say, actually, we're just 8 people working harder. And maybe we have some small benefit from AI. Obviously, this is an exaggeration to make an example here. But what views do you have on, is AI actually making people more productive right now, or is it still to come?
So is AI making people more productive? I think people, like everybody in the workforce right now currently, we're able to see how like important it is to like use AI. And well, I currently am an intern at AARP, and like you're able to, they say like you're able to use like Copilot or platforms that we've allowed.
Right.
But integrating AI into your daily life, I think, is important to like help you like stay organized, but also like you need to think straight through what you're doing. Like you need to also think for yourself, right? But talking about like the workforce and for companies, like how they're gonna like go by their margins. I think that companies, like you see Claude now, like their entire workforce is mostly AI.
Right.
But these are companies that actually like are going through a lot of trouble. Like if you've seen like Klarna, it's going through a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. But you also see companies that are also growing along with AI. Let's say Disney, they had this new contract with OpenAI, where they're able to, where Sora is able to have like rights on character from the Disney world, which is so interesting because nowadays, like, well, what's going to happen to these jobs? The people who did the animations, what's going to happen to the people who did the sound effects? What's going to happen to people who were running all these systems? Like, you're also thinking about them, right? Mm-hmm. But the margins for Disney would technically look better in the long term, right? So it's both of like, it's like a double sword, like, yes.
So on the AI front, let's stick with that for one moment. What are you most optimistic about AI? Or are there particular areas that you think are really interesting and as business people, investors, and analysts, we should be paying attention to?
Yes. So actually there's Claude AI for coding, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And
so Claude AI, like, it's good for coding. And like, I've seen a lot of companies who say like, oh, we rely on Claude for having like our codes making and like also our systems running. And actually like the parent company is actually going through a lot of struggle right now because they just had a system fall down as of yesterday. But you see like a lot of these companies, like they're all relying on several different companies, and especially like also the chip providers, like whether we talk about NVIDIA and now Google's like Alphabet, like they're joining in because they're also going to be working with the TPUs you previously mentioned, right? it's so interesting, and like how many new companies are growing out of this.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot going on. Now, also, okay, as we're moving to wrap up here this episode, want to say thanks first, but before we wrap, you're a School of Business student. What are you excited about for your studies here at GW, and what are you looking forward to for 2026 and beyond?
I guess what I've liked so far here at GW, I really like the community. Like I really like the people I'm able to work with at the Stock and Portfolio Management Club. The support we get as well from the School of Business, and this year I learned a lot about like the people I'm able to work with. Whether it's the social media team for SPMC, Jaden, Sofia Mian, Maya, these are people who are so aware of like what's happening in finance, but also like how can we relate this to people and grab their attention through social media. Maddie writing the newsletter, so many new members that have joined along the way. I am so glad to be working with them, Varasha, and also Kate and Taber, like people who are so passionate about the markets, but also so dedicated to building this community of people who like also care about the markets, right? So I'm really glad that I'm able to work with them, and also I learned a lot through previous mentors here within the club as well. People who have worked so closely, like making sure that the club grows a lot. I remember like Joshua Hamft, and like people who have been so passionate about it. Like that's like a lot of inspiration for me. That's what I learned this year so far, like to give my best. And what I'm looking forward for 2026 is a lot of growth, like a lot of learning, and just being part of SPMC and like being the president, and also like working with the investment institute, like such an excitement for me. And in the long term, I really want to go into investment banking.
Excellent.
But if investment banking doesn't work, I can also try skydiving. Professional skydiver.
Excellent. Well, yeah. I think that's a fantastic place to end on. I'm sure you're going to be a fantastic investment banker, and skydiving's possibly a hobby. You could also go into asset management. Well, I want to say thank you, Sofia, for joining us on this episode of Market News with Rodney Lake. Very much appreciated. We thank you and hope you'll come back at some point in the future. And we look forward to working with you in the Stock and Portfolio Management Club this spring. Thank you very much.
Of course.
That's a wrap for this episode of Market News with Rodney Lake. We'll see you back on the next episode. Thank you. Disclaimer, the content shared in the GW Investment Institute podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the GW Investment Institute or the George Washington University. Listeners should not act upon the information provided without seeking professional advice from a qualified financial advisor. Investing involves risks, including the loss of principal. The GW Investment Institute, the George Washington University, and the podcast hosts do not assume any responsibility for any investment decisions made based on the content of this podcast. Always conduct your own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.